You mentioned a couple of trades that didn't work out well. I want to toss you a trade that you did with the Twins that worked out brilliantly and is continuing to work out well, which was the 2 months of Nelson Cruz to the Tampa Bay Rays in was it 20 mid 2021, I think. Um, you guys were a clear seller at that point. Nelson Cruz was still performing at certainly like an all-star level. I think he was 40 or 41, but realistically, the odds of him being on the team the next year, he was either going to cost a lot, or I'm sure you guys internally, as you would with any 41-year-old player, had some worries about decline, and he actually did end up declining pretty quickly after that. But for 2 months of a 41-year-old Nelson Cruz, you guys got two pitchers, Joe Ryan being the first one, who just made the All-Star team. Drew Strotman, I think, was the second one. I'm curious, and I guess this kind of goes back to something I asked a few minutes ago. The Rays are certainly a team that churns out pitching prospects as much or more than any organization. And they've built themselves on that. So I was curious, as you guys were looking through their system, and I'm sure you wanted some starting pitching, how did you settle on Ryan specifically? And also, was that an example of the Rays have more to choose from in that regard because they do such a good job developing young pitchers? And I know Ryan at that point was like 24 years old, kind of stuck at AAA. I think he was technically over in Japan pitching in the Olympics at that point. But so what was the process like of identifying him and Strotman too? And what were those negotiations like? And was there an element of, well, if we're looking for young pitching, going to the Rays is probably a decent idea generally?
Aaron, can I ask you to fact check me on this? Who was the additional pitcher we gave up out in the deal? I think it was Faucher, but is that right?
Yes, who is in the majors now.
Okay. Okay, because I think this actually ties into a few of the questions you asked. Let's ironically deal with the Faucher part first, which was as we were making that deal, kind of at the last minute, they said, okay, we need an additional value in this because we're getting the guy who's only going to be here for 2 months. We're giving up two pitchers who you would control for 12 years. And they said, Calvin Faucher is the guy we want. And we were like, it was kind of the needle skipping on the record moment in the room where we're like, wait a minute, they're asking for who? And not that we didn't value him, but we just were like, this was a little bit of like, okay, let's run our finger down the list of our prospects. We're still running our finger. It's like, okay, we got to Colin Faucher. I think, John, you asked this earlier. It's like, why on earth are they asking about him?
Right.
Because this is, renowned as maybe one of the most intelligent front offices. They're like, what do they see in him that we're missing? And so I will say that deal got hung up for more than a minute on whether or not we actually should include Colin Faucher in the deal.
By the
And
way,
good
let me
for
say it. He was a 10th round pick. I'm looking at his
right.
baseball reference page. And at the
Yeah.
time you traded him, he had a 7.04 ERA at double A.
Which also was what we took note of at the time. And so Calvin Faucher is, obviously, so we ended up doing the deal, but I just wanted to take a second to pause on that to say that was a perfect example of what John asked earlier of like when your attention is really drawn to why on earth is this person being included in a deal? But let's get back to the bigger conversation. So I want to give credit where it's due. Derek Falvey did this deal. I actually was in Croatia with my family on like constant conference calls with the group discussing the kind of nuances of it. I think we got to talk about what the Twins traded first. Nelson Cruz, at that point seemed almost ageless, right? Like we got him when he was old. He was extremely good. We extended him. He was such a backbone of that Bombas team that we all celebrated in 2019. But I think he was more than that, and the more than that that attracted the Rays was the leadership component. So when you think of that Rays team, they had a lot of young players, a lot of young Latin American players. And so I think they viewed him as a guy who was going to galvanize them in two fronts. One was he was going to take the pressure off the young guys. He was going to hit third or fourth in the lineup and obviously deliver a ton of damage. But more than that, he was also going to be the guy who they thought could really elevate what was a relatively youthful Latin American based clubhouse and really get some of those guys performing at a level that maybe they had yet to achieve. So I think they viewed his value as being twofold. I do think he didn't hit quite as well as he aspired to hit when he went over there, but I do, from what we heard anecdotally, he definitely delivered on the second part of the thing. So now what did we acquire in the deal? Drew Stottmeyer was a great pitcher, great arm. Honestly, had a better arm than Joe Ryan relative to some of the metrics and statistics. But what we loved about Joe Ryan was he had this unhittable fastball at the top of the zone. And I think It was a time in which Josh Kolk, who was kind of heading up a lot of our pitching analysis, he had identified him as having carry to his fastball. And maybe he was one of the first test cases that we really were put to evaluate how much did we want to value that, because it wasn't really a above average velocity fastball. He was throwing 90, 91, 92 from time to time. But what he was doing was he was missing barrels. He was pitching above the barrel at the top of the zone. And I think maybe this was an example where his stuff just didn't grade out as well to the Tampa Bay Rays as it did for us. Like, we were particularly intrigued with his pitch mix. They didn't necessarily see a path forward for him being a starter who could get through lineups 3 times. We were particularly enamored with that fastball at the top of the zone, his ability to change eye levels with a breaking ball at the bottom of the zone. And then you referenced it, Aaron. He was over in Japan competing in the Olympics. We love the competitiveness this guy has. And I think that's played out in droves. Like, no one can tell Joe Ryan when he toes the rubber that he has anything shy of the best stuff in the American League. He believes that. Like, he was an all-star this year. He thought he should have been an all-star 3 or 4 times. And maybe he was right a few of those times. I think he had a real argument in some of those years. But he carries himself like he wants to compete in those huge moments. That was what our scouting report was on him. And that, coupled with the fact that he had this carry fastball, yes, at a slightly below average velocity, but we were willing to take a chance that could play at the major league level. And it sure has. I wish that Nelly was a bit of a better acquisition for them in the short term. I'm not sure they would do that trade over again, but that team trades a lot of players. They had somehow just not seen the path forward with his velocity that fastball was going to play. We were more optimistic, and it's worked out extremely well due to Joe's work ethic and his competitiveness.
And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.